He's funny. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started right at noon. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves, say hello, let me know why you're even interested in this topic. Put it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. I'm really interested. What are you hoping to learn from this session? Oh, good. Jeannie is unmuting herself. Thank you. You always have good stuff. Oh, Colleen, thank you. I appreciate that comment, and that's really nice. I hope that you feel energized and excited about the information that I'll share today. And again, we're just all learning from each other. What else? Who else wants to talk and tell me why you are here today? What do you hope to learn?
What is the name of it?
What is it, Jeannie?
I said, I'm just looking to, well, obviously you have really great ideas all the time.
Thank you.
Looking to see, and obviously the book is awesome. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to learn more. I've loved the book. Oh, thanks, Holly. We need to get that book in the hands of general educators, though, right? If you've got any ideas for how we can do that, because they are the ones who need this information, because it starts proactively embedded and intentional right from the start. And that happens in the general ed classroom. So Joan Green, thanks for being here too. I always learn from you. Thanks, everybody. Well, it's 12 o'clock. So I will share my screen and oops, let's start with this. I will minimize this. You don't need to see me. And I will click on presenter view. And here we go. Whoops, why are we at the very last? Oh, very last. All right, let me see. I love this. I always model failure. So let me here, I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to go back. So you can cancel all this, right? Right, Naomi? So we'll get that started right from slide 1. We'll present again, presenter view. And now I will share my screen. Okay, well, welcome everyone. So excited to have you be here today. It's a privilege to share with you, to facilitate information with you, and we're all learning together. So my name is Karen Janowski. I am an inclusive and assistive technology consultant up in the Boston area. I know we've got a couple of people local to our area who are participants. Today, we're going to be talking about promoting executive function skills with inclusive technology. And what's awesome is there is so much that's out there. But if you're interested, I did add the slide link in the Google Doc that's been set up for this. And please take notes, add information. Otherwise, if you're not on that Zoom link, you can get there. It's bit.ly/EF and then the date today. So it is case sensitive. EF is uppercase 924. So welcome everybody, and feel free. I will try to monitor the chat, or if you've got something, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or save them for the end. But a little bit about me, as we just were talking about, I'm one of the co-authors in the Inclusive Learning 365 book, and some of the information that I'm sharing today are some of the strategies that we have in the book. And I am passionate about helping all of our learners bypass those challenges. And it's all about helping them gain independence, feel successful, and technology makes it possible. Technology is so fantastic. So, executive functions. Well, by definition, the easiest way to explain them is that they are the cognitive capabilities that enable independent, purposeful, goal-directed behavior. So there's going to be so much breakdown in that area. And even those of us who are adults can have breakdowns in our cognitive capabilities to enable independent, purposeful, goal-directed activities. So just quickly, I just want to give some background before we dive into the technology, because you need to know why you need a rationale. Why are we even using the technology? What is so important? So when we think about executive functions, we think about the ability to have cognitive flexibility, the ability to have impulse control, and our working memory skills. And along with that comes some additional skills. Executive functions are crucial for success in work, in school, whatever our occupations are. So it includes goal-directed persistence, sustained attention, metacognition, planning, organization, time management. So think about that blue level and the green level, or the light green level, how it can impact all of our academic skills: reading comprehension, study, written expression, math skills, research. All kinds of academic skills are impacted when when our executive function skills have not been fully developed. So, the video is unavailable, so we'll skip that one. So the big thing is the prefrontal cortex is the control center for executive function. And it's considered to be the brain's CEO. Now, what happens is it's the last part of the brain to mature. And so what's important about that is a great deal of executive function skill development happens during the school years, but it continues on typically right up until the mid-20s. And so think about that. We've got such an important role in helping our learners develop that skill. But there's a couple of brain structures that I really wanted to focus in on: the amygdala and the reticular activating system and the prefrontal cortex. What is so important about the amygdala is it is basically, here, I'll go forward to this slide. It's basically the traffic cop. And if information is non-stressful, and then the traffic cop amygdala will let that information go through the amygdala to the cortex, to the prefrontal cortex, when it can be interpreted and understood. But if there is information that causes stress, the traffic cop stops the amygdala, stops the information from being processed and going forward into the prefrontal cortex. So think about that important role of the amygdala. And so the prefrontal cortex information, then it can be reflected, it can be thought about, it's a thinking brain. But if the traffic cop amygdala stops the information from processing through to the prefrontal cortex, it stays at the reactive lower brain, where we've seen many learners have that automatic fight, flight, or freeze response. And I don't know about you, but I see that so often when it comes to written expression. So our role in promoting information that can be processed through the amygdala into the prefrontal cortex is so important. So again, always think, is learning occurring when there's stressful situations? What are the implications for our learners? So think about that. So some typical sources of stress, and we could add, when I have a longer period of time, we break off and we have a conversation about, what are those sources of stress in the classroom? Boredom, absolutely. No personal relevance to the topic. If they've already learned the material, we've lost them. If they're frustrated and they see themselves with that fixed mindset where they cannot change outcomes, those are sources of stress. The fear of being wrong, that makes kids stressed. And then there are other ideas. Feel free to add them into the chat, because there's plenty of reasons why this classroom can be stressful to our learners. So if you think of any others, feel free to add it. But I love this quote from Steve Jobs. He says, if you are working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. So think about how that reality can help our learners and help them just not even see a situation as stress, that it has personal relevance, that they are invested in whatever you are inviting them to complete. So pause and reflect. Are your instructional methods reaching the reflective brain? Think about that. Think about what you're currently doing. And for many of us, it causes us to change our plans. What are we doing? Let's think in new ways. So this is a slide. This is actually something that I did see in a classroom. And this is a typical way. We talk about brain frames, we talk about graphic organizers, but how effective was this graphic organizer for the learner who then needed to make some sense out of it and produce a written composition? Not very helpful. And then how about this one? And again, I show this one all the time because I think that this is such a classic example of executive function challenges. When we use materials and techniques and tools that are ineffective for our kids. This was actually a middle school locker. Maybe you've seen it. What do you notice here? Maybe you've walked in the hallway of middle schools and seen something similar. But I think this was during a class period. And so envision this child trying to find what they needed for the class, and look at all the paper and look at all the organizational challenges. And this kid probably just shut down, but I think it's such a classic example of a learner who has yet to develop executive function skills. I'm going to come back to this concept here in a bit. Also, this is another option, another thing to think about. How effective are reading logs when we're developing executive function skills? Think back to the role of the amygdala, the role of the prefrontal cortex, the role of stress and how it limits executive function skill development, and think about our learners. Does a reading log promote higher order thinking or stress? Think about this especially. How about this? Starting page, ending page, date, title of book, parent signature. What is the point? We know that self-selected reading is such a great indicator of reading success. And yet when we require our learners to record what they're doing when it comes to reading, I mean, this is a cute one, but then there's also, time on task, how many minutes did you? So think about your instructional methods. Are they promoting higher order thinking? How about this? Worksheets. Anyone who's ever heard me speak knows that I will always say worksheets are the disability for many of our learners. And this was a study guide. How in the world did this student study from this particular worksheet? Were they able to read their own writing? And is this an effective choice? Is this an effective tool? Think in new ways. So with some of that is the background. So these are some of the executive function skills needed for successful school performance: planning, organization, time management, working memory, metacognition. So, and then when we think about even some of those specific skills, then we can break it down even further. So with reading comprehension, you have to think about understanding what is being read. Is there difficulty with visualization? With writing, there's so many parts to the writing process. Where is the breakdown? And depending on where the breakdown is, that is where you meet the learner. Depending on their strengths as well, that is where you meet the learner in terms of recommending a particular instructional tool or strategy. Homework, there can be so many parts to the breakdown in homework. How about recording it, getting started, sustaining that focus, even remembering to do it, and then once they're starting, how are they handling distractions? Long-term projects are the bane of the existence for many of our kids with EF issues. because they can't come up with a topic. They're developing that timeline, managing the timeline, editing, revising their work, finishing it. And then even once they finished it, how many times have we worked with students where they didn't even pass in the work? So I know I see that fairly often. I see it less often now with, I think the pandemic, I'm just going to take a little aside. I think the pandemic really forced educators to think in new ways in terms, I mean, because there was so much online and virtual learning, so everything had to be technology based. So I see a decrease in the students who are struggling with handing things in because so much more is done now with Google Classroom or Canvas or Microsoft Teams. So that was one of the benefits of virtual learning. The other thing too, we do have to say, for some learners, virtual learning worked really well for them because they didn't have to manage all those papers and they didn't have to manage a locker and they didn't have to manage their textbooks. It really helped them to be more focused and have less to manage and less to organize. So that was also a benefit for some of our learners. Studying, that whole idea about getting started and sailing, what's important when you study. And so an organization, again, we could see, go back to that student locker. How in the world was that? Where does that learner even begin? They lose assignments, they lose materials, they don't even know what to bring from class to class. So these are some of the functional ways that executive function skills can impact our learners. So when we think about how do we address those skills, Dawson and Guare have written several books that I highly recommend. They are on executive function skills in adolescents and learners, and it's really customized, especially for students and for those of us who work with learners with these EF challenges. So they advocate for a two-pronged approach. You do environmental accommodations and you do explicit strategy instruction. So think about that. Now, along with that too, if you're following along in the slides, this is a live link to an executive function skills questionnaire. I have actually adapted it and made it a Google form. And on a scale, I use the same scale as Dawson and Guare on a scale of 1 to 7. So it's a 36 question executive skills inventory. And I'm just going to take you there for a second because I think it's also, in fact, just recently I did this with a student and they just thought that they were an executive function mess. And what was so helpful was when we reviewed her scores, she was so relieved to find out that there were areas of strength for her as well. And I think that this is what this inventory helps our learners do. So I do highly recommend this. This is a paper version, but again, you could make it a Google form and then do your calculations from there. So it's divided up into 9 different areas. And oh, no, actually 12 different areas because there's 3 questions for every area as part of the inventory and what it looks at. So when you look at what executive skill those questions are connected to, this is how they've divided it up. So you can go over with your learner, what are their strongest skills? What are their weakest skills? And then share this information. I have found this inventory to be incredibly helpful when I'm talking about a learner's skills in this area, because again, they are so broad and it really helps a learner identify where their areas to strengthen are as well. And it helps parents and the team as well. Is anyone else using the executive function skills inventory? And if you have, leave it in the chat, what's working, what isn't working about it for you. And I have to say, any learner who is referred to me for a consultation around executive function or an evaluation around executive function and what using the SET framework, what we can recommend, I always use this online resource and give it to the student as a Google form link. Recommend it highly. So again, if we think about those external supports and the structure, part of it is using visual supports. And this area, I have to say, I think that many educators do well with the visual supports because we've seen so much emphasis on that over the years. You know, the sticky notes, the symbols, symbol schedule, the timers, the agenda books. And again, the agendas don't work for every learner because sometimes they can't read their own writing. Lesson Picks is a great resource. And if you're new to Lesson Picks, this link will take you there. It is an awesome online, in fact, let me just take you there if anyone is new to Lesson Picks, because this is something custom material, simple and affordable. I don't work for any company that I'm going to be talking about today. I just care about, let's give our learners anything they need, whatever it takes. And Lesson Picks has custom learning materials. They have a sharing center. They've got clip art. It's only $36 a year. And what you can do is create, they've got over 40,000 symbols. You can create all kinds of activities. You can create all kinds of visual supports. You can create all kinds of occupational therapy, fine motor types of activities and literacy activities. I highly recommend that you look into this if you are new to Lesson Picks. It's really a phenomenal resource. And Beth Poss is the educator who does a lot of professional development about the power behind Lesson Picks. There's so much that's possible. So I just took a little aside with that. But again, it's a great resource for visual support creation, among many other things. So I've also created an executive function toolkit. It's a Google site. And here's the link here that will take you to that. And let me just click on that link right now so you can know that this resource will always be available to you. So resources for executive functions. It has low tech and readily available options. It has self-regulation tools, organization and time management, pretty extensive list, study skills. This is one thing I do want to point out. If you do have time to go back and spend some time in this Google site, our learners who struggle with study skills and working memory issues, this spaced repetition technique that this video here links to it, as well as the importance of spaced repetition to help. It's described as the most powerful way to remember more. Highly recommend sharing. This one is a really kid-friendly, a learner-friendly video that you could even watch with them. It's about 8 minutes long. So those are great resources. There's some memory tools. I'm going to talk a bit about Google Keep because I can't recommend that one enough. There's some note-taking skills, tools, some research tools, some writing tools. So it's pretty extensive. And if you happen to find any links that are broken, or just email me, that would be helpful. I do try to keep it up to date. So that is always something that will be available to you, as well as this Google slide presentation. So when we think about implementation for explicit strategy instruction, so what do we want to do? Definitely keep it simple. And again, we want to think, let me just check on the chat too. Let me just see. Oh, okay, thank you for putting that in. Yeah, can you put in the chat? Thank you. Thank you, because it's hard to monitor the chat as well as the slides and just keep things going because we only have 45 minutes. So keep it simple. What is already available? You know, a great starting place is use what you've got. And what does every learner have? Pretty much middle school and high school, sometimes even our upper elementary kids, that what is in their pocket that is so powerful for them, that phone, whether it's iOS or Android. And then nowadays it appears, at least around here, many of our learners have district supplied Chromebooks. So use what you have. Keep it simple. So one of the things, and again, if you have found differently, that's great. But one of the things that I have found in my work with learners is, yeah, they're great with Snapchat. They're great with Instagram, but they don't know how to use these other features that are built into their phones that can keep them organized and can provide that external support that they need. But again, if you've got an executive function issue, you don't know how to develop a plan, and that explicit strategy instruction is so important. And so showing them the calendar functions built into their phones. Do you have kids who are using those? The camera features, that is one thing they do often take a picture of the board or take a picture of the homework or whatever, but then organizing how to retrieve that, it can be a challenge. The clock features, you can set timers and alarms with different sounds to keep yourself organized and manage time better. The reminder function, and the calendar, I can't recommend enough. I show all the learners with whom I work who are struggling in this area. I show them even how they can use the Siri or the assistant features like Siri, and even the location features. Siri, remind me when I get home to get started on my math homework page 129 or something like that. I use it personally, and I'm sure I'd love to hear how you all use it. Like when I go to Costco, I'll say, Siri, remind me when I get to Costco to buy bloom, bloom, bloom. And I'll have like 3 or 4 things that I want to make sure I don't forget. And when I get close to Costco, that reminder will pop up. Same thing with the calendar functions. We can use Siri, add to calendar, pass in science project, Mondays, whatever next Monday is. So you can do that, and you can color code things as well. So even showing, I do find that learners aren't as excited to use the calendar and reminders function until I show them how they can use Siri, and that makes it more intriguing, more novel. That's another thing with our learners with EF. They need novelty. They need an innovative way. They need us thinking outside the box. So there's a link here to learn more Siri commands too. And again, I'm going to look at the okay, and who teaches this in schools? Great question. Yeah, use GPS and Bluetooth reminders. So again, we use it personally, and then we can share it. Tammy, that's a great question. And if anybody else has any thoughts about it, add it to the chat. But so often our learners have learning strategies. They have, I don't know what you call it, but when it's built into their IEPs, that they get resource support, learning strategies, whatever it is called in your district. Why can't that happen during that time? And again, it doesn't take a great deal of time, but if you have other thoughts, like, are you teaching this? And I know sometimes when I provide ongoing support and ongoing coaching and consultation, I will meet with the learner and the staff member so that they can see how it's being used and that they can reinforce the concept. So it's a great question, and people add in if you're doing it and what you would recommend to Tammy and what it looks like in your district. Thanks for that. That's a great question. So when we think about time management, this is really an important idea, an important concept, because it's not just the idea of time. What is time management? It's being able to tell time. It's being able to estimate time. It's being aware of time. It's being able to initiate tasks considering the time constraints as well. So time management is a higher order skill, especially telling time is lower order, but time estimation and time awareness is really important. So when we think about helping our learners manage time management, we want to think in terms of developing goal-directed persistence, because this is so important, especially for our kids who are breaking down or melting down or whatever it is. We want to build goal-directed persistence, and that's the capacity or drive to follow through to completion. And there'll be competing interests and there'll be distractions, but it's the ability to stick with something right to the end. And there are a number of tools in the executive function wiki, the Google site, that address those time management skills. One of the things that I do want to call your attention to is the whole concept of time awareness and time estimation. This is from LD Online, and I'll click on this link. And you can use this in Google Forms, I mean, whatever you want, but this is helping our students estimate how long something will take. And I know my middle daughter, when she was in high school, she would think, oh, Mom, I can get it done in 30 minutes. Well, she was such a perfectionist, things would take her 3 hours, literally. And so the ability to, record the starting time, the ending time, and then having that discussion, well, how much time did it actually take? And was there a difference? So using a tool like this to help develop the skill of time estimation can be really helpful for our learners. So working memory. So working memory skills, so important for all of these academic areas. Reading comprehension, spelling, composing text, note-taking, math computation, holding on to that information and then using it for purpose and using it intentionally. And we see a lot of our learners who are referred to us have significant breakdown, especially discrepancy in their cognitive abilities. Their cognitive scores might be very high, but when it comes to their working memory skills, I mean, I worked with a student once whose working memory skills were in the first percentile, and his cognitive skills for knowledge and information were in the 99th percentile. So he was a bit of a disaster that we really need to come up with a lot of strategies for. If there are any questions, okay, my son, okay, oh, great, I'm looking forward to, yes. Yeah, Sarah Ward is excellent. And time blindness. And she also talks about forward thinking. What does something look like when it is done, and using those kinds of visuals? If you're familiar with Sarah Ward, she's awesome. Okay, it's so hard to monitor the chat. So I'm going to keep moving along, but feel free to interrupt, just say, Karen, wait a second, here's a question, if there is one. So think about the technology for working memory. Screencasting is huge. And again, my daughter, who was an executive function disaster, she at one point when she was taking, when she was a junior and she was taking pre-cal, she said, Mom, I get it when I'm in school, but I don't get it when I'm home. And so I did ask her math teacher, could you record your instruction? Because it's important, especially around complex math, you really want to see how it was presented, and the value in screencasts, as I'm sure you all know, is the ability to pause it, the ability to rewind it, the ability to view it as many times as you can. And again, I encouraged her to see go to your math teacher after school. And she said, Mom, she'll think I'm stupid. And again, so you always want to think, what is the perspective of our learners? My daughter, for some reason, was so concerned that her teacher, who she was dependent on for the grade, would see her as incapable of handling the math. So she didn't want to go for extra help. And again, that was something that we had to overcome. So there are many tools. There are many Chrome extensions. There are many online tools. Even the document cameras have some recording features, so do the whiteboards. And then there are some apps that you can use as well. So highly recommend the use of screencasting tools. And why is that? Because it empowers our kids for success. They have control over how they're hearing the instruction, how many times they hear it repeated, how many times they view it, and they are empowered for success. And isn't that the point? So technology for reading. So when we think about working memory and how it impacts reading comprehension. So there are a number of tools that can work well for this. Newsella, Common Lit, ReadWorks, Edpuzzle, again, is the same sort of idea around comprehension, where a learner will watch a video, but the questions are embedded throughout the video by the instructor, by the educator, so they don't have to hold on to that information. Lit Charts has awesome learning guides, and there is a Lit Charts app. And Shmoop also has learning guides that can help our learners better understand the content that they're reading, especially around fiction. But one that I did want to show you, because this is a very inclusive tool, and I'm going to sign in. If you're unfamiliar with Actively Learn, I can't recommend this tool enough if you're working with learners who are struggling with reading comprehension. And when you first sign up, and again, I don't work for the company, and it has a freemium version and it has a premium version. I want to show you very quickly some of the freemium version parts. So again, you can choose by grade level and Lexile level and some of the standards, but we can choose any of their high interest articles. You can also, as part of the free version, you can add 3 of your own articles every month. And it's getting to be the end of September. So get your 3 free articles for September and then 3 for October. And once you install them, once you download them and bring them into Actively Learn, they will always be there for you to use from year to year. So we can view more of them. So, all right, let's click on this article. So again, before we even select it, it's showing that it's 6th to 12th grade. It shows the Lexile level and it shows that it's 3 pages. So I'm going to click on this article. And this is all part of the free, because I don't pay for this. It gives you some ideas for how to teach it. And this part that's grayed out, this is the extra help. This is part of the premium version. If you really want that, but there's so much to it, it gives you a pre-reading question. This is something that they've already done. How much, what do you know about? What's like, throw in a poll. So here's the article. And one of the things that you'll notice is the visual presentation is a little bit different. So what I want to do, I'm going to go into settings, because I've customized this. So this is more typically what an article would look like. And so here, that's more typically, but look at this. We can customize the settings. So some of our learners really need enlarged text. Some of our learners need more white space. Some of our learners need a different color background. So that's one of the ways. Now, you'll notice they have already highlighted some things. So if I click on that, see how I have never opened this article before until today. It added my name in it as the educator. So it looks like I have already adapted this for my learners, whereas all they did was change it and add my name. So here's some background information about Manhattan. Here's a definition of skyline. Here's the World Trade Center and what you can do. So this is already set up, ready to go. But if I want to customize this, and I can click on the student preview, if I want to customize it, I hit the customize button. And I just want you to see what you can do. So you could delete these questions or add your own. So let's say I want to highlight this. The memorial is located here. And I select text. Now I can insert a question. I can insert a note. I can insert a link. I can white it out. I can listen to it. That's really important in the student view too. They can always listen to the text. So the insert link, the whiteout can be really helpful if you're customizing an article for particular learners. Like some text might be too complex, or the length of it might be too complex. So you can just white it out. So if I want to insert a question, all I do, I've got short answer, multiple choice, poll, drawing. These are part of the premium, and I wouldn't necessarily use them, but they are options as well. So that's really quickly a tool that can bypass those working memory challenges for our learners who are struggling also with reading comprehension, because you can embed the questions throughout instead of having a learner read the entire article and then go back and find the evidence. So that can be very helpful for our kids with working memory issues. So I do want to make sure you know about that. Technology tools for organization. This is huge. Again, think back to that image of that locker with the paper and the folders and everything all over the floor. When we use technology to keep us organized, we can manage it more easily. We can track it more easily. We can retrieve information more easily. And the big thing is it's searchable. Like one of the things I wanted to pull up some information that I've done from previous presentations. So I just opened up my Google Drive, opened up my presentations and typed in EF, and I could find some of the information that I'd saved. It's searchable, it's easily retrievable. So the big thing is that, you know, in middle school, go paperless. It's much easier now with Google Classroom. And I always say, what is the rationale to stick with paper? Paper is the disability. So easiest ways to do this, make sure all your assignments are online and accept all assignments online. And oftentimes organizational issues disappear, if not get reduced. So I do want to spend a moment too on the external support and the explicit strategy instruction that comes with Google Keep and Google Tasks. So I'm going to open up I have a, whoops, not this one. Here is, oh, here's the one. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, so here I have a Google Doc open. And if you have noticed on the side, here is our, oh, where is my, so interesting. I love when I have an epic fail. So I should have my show sidebar. Nope. Okay. I model failure. RIQ is an awesome. Here we go. I had to bypass the RIQ toolbar. So here, as you've noticed in Google Docs, there is the Google Calendar feature, there's the Google Keep feature, and there is the Google Tasks feature. So I'm going to click on the Google Keep feature, and anything that I've ever created in Google Keep will show up right here. So this can be really important. You know, you can create checklists when creating, you know, for editing or for even when you want to help you task initiation, you can add a note here that you can share with your learners that can help them to get started. You can, I've added vocabulary. So I, you know, if I want a student to compose different, maybe something about bud, not buddy. So here's, if they've got some spelling issues, I can add some of the vocabulary here. Here's an edit, this is an editing checklist that one of the students that I worked with, he said, you know, so this is what he created. Did I read the directions and did I pass it in? And then, so there's all different types of things that you can do within Google Keep. Now, the same thing with tasks. Tasks you can add any task. So we'll add a task. And let's say it's a breakdown of a history project. So now we can add in the details. We can add whatever they are. We can add in what date. Let's say it's due next September 30th. We'll say, okay. Now we can add some information underneath this. So here we can add categories, add a subtask. So I can add and then add more details. So I can help learners break down what it is they need to do in an organized way that's easily retrievable. So the use of Google Tasks and Google Keep can be really effective in many different ways. How many of you are already using those to help support your learners with executive function skill challenges? And remember that it does require explicit strategy instruction. So Google Keep, Google Tasks, we're winding down. The big point is always think about building strategic competence. We want our learners to feel successful. So oftentimes when I do have, when I work with a learner who has executive function challenges and they want something written in about assistive technology, I say, let's do a building strategic competence goal instead, because then it's all encompassing. It's not just about what the assistive technology is. It's the whole team is taking ownership. So that's oftentimes what I will recommend. And again, you think about the executive function tech toolkit wiki. So to wind down, remember, we're already overloaded, right? We're already doing too much. And Tammy brought up, well, who is the one who's teaching this? That's a great question. Remember, replace strategies that are less effective and not universally designed. They are not inclusive. So maybe you're doing something already, but it's not inclusive. It doesn't hit all of your learners. So you're going to replace that strategy. And remember, you want to build strategic competence. So I'll take a minute for questions, and I will also take a look at the chat. Let's see, Google sells user data. It is not safe for education, especially. Yeah. That is something to consider, Bob. And yes, but again, if there is another option, or think about what you're currently doing, because there's, no matter what, there's obstacles, whatever it is. So think about, is there another option that could work well for your learners to replace, or is what you're already doing effective? So yes, great tool. Can you change the lexile level of an article? Melanie, in Actively Learn, you can't. But again, that's when you could use a tool like, oh my goodness, what's that tool that allows you to, well, Snap and Read has that feature, but what's that other tool that allows you to adapt the complexity of an article? Somebody knows it, and it's just escaped me. That tool that, not Newsella, Rewordify. Thank you, Kelly. Yep, that's it. Word finding issues. Have you ever run small group instructional classes that focused on direct instruction? I would love to, but again, I'm a consultant, but I oftentimes will recommend that, Allison, to as part of their instructional strategies or part of their learning strategies. I see that learning strategies all the time, and I oftentimes will recommend, feel free to use the executive function toolkit wiki as a starting place. So, yep, love to see it implemented at the 5th grade level before the move to the middle school. Well, again, it's all about the external supports. Are we building the supports for our learners? And then are we also building in the explicit strategy instruction? And oftentimes I hear educators say, yeah, well, we use an agenda. And again, does that work for every learner? And oftentimes too, I see it that an adult will put the information in the agenda. And again, how does that promote success and independence? Let's have a long-term vision. We want to build these skills. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Thank you all so much for joining in today. And I hope you found it helpful and it learned at least one new thing or one new strategy, one new idea that you can immediately implement. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it and have a great weekend. Thank you all. Thank you, Allison. If you're still on, Allison Bowden, thank you. See you all. Thanks, Colleen.